Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5, and we're presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Ty Anderson. Ty, what is up?
What's going on? How are we doing today?
I'm great. I gotta say this. I listen to the hockey show. I'm a listener. I'm usually sometimes out at that time, going to different games.
P1 listener.
That's right, I am. And someone called in on Saturday, I think, and said, I listened to a bunch of hockey podcasts and Evan's the host of like all of them. And I was like, oh, thank you. And then you said, I can never understand Evan because he talks in such a vernacular that his age uses. I don't think I do I?
Not all the time, but like the first time I heard mid was from you. And I was like, what does that mean? I was like, what is that?
I said it to Haggs the other day. And it's he acted like I said something from a different planet.
Yeah, but this was like a year and a half ago. But no, you have a context of memes and online stuff that I don't understand because I'm not like I don't go online as much as I probably should for somebody who has my job, but I don't enjoy it, so I don't go online a bunch. And you'll just say things or like bring up things, and I'm like, Evan, I'm 33. You have to explain this to me in old man terms. Like I don't know what that is. So it's more so the memes and like the people. Like you showed me the big baby. I didn't know about like the big,
that's right, the big baby. I don't think that's an age difference. I think boomers on Facebook probably saw that.
Yeah, probably, but I didn't. You gotta understand. If I didn't see it, it's new to me. That's
the big baby is legendary. That the baby crawling on the back of his parent. Oh my god, that kid's notorious.
No, there's a new big baby apparently that I found probably before you, perhaps. I don't know.
I don't know who it is, so that's news to me. Well,
I only know because the Detroit Lions commented dibs on the TikTok of the baby. They want to draft that baby when it's old enough. So
they have the rights. The
do.
Bruins will want to draft him and stick him in front of the net on the second
exceptional
line.
Status for that gigantic baby.
Yeah, he'll be in the dub at like 13 years old. Well, it's like TikTok's about to get banned. If it like, I'm stressing.
That's a bummer.
Like a drug for me. Yeah, like I am an avid TikTok user. Like you mentioned, not going online enough. I don't go on Twitter a lot anymore, but yeah, I am always on TikTok. Like before bed. Anytime I'm like, oh, I don't know what to write for my next graph in this story, I'm like, I should go on TikTok for a little bit. And you go to
the bathroom and you go to the bathroom and you're on TikTok until your leg goes numb, and then you have to
the blood is gone from the legs. I'll tell you,
I call an ambulance.
I stand up, I'm like, whoa, like that. I have to hold on to the walls.
Yeah,
I mean, the TikTok ban, like, I don't know. I think it's something to do like the Chinese own it, but I guess everyone's going to a different app that's like very run by the Chinese. So I don't know what the deal with that is. I just keep it as is. I want to just keep using TikTok. It's rotting my brain, but like I'm enjoying it. So don't stop. So.
Yeah, I don't understand that whole thing. It's something about like the security or like propaganda, whatever. And it's like, then I go outside and look around and I go, oh, okay.
I'm touching grass.
And
there's propaganda everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I got called for jury duty. Yeah, on Wednesday. And I don't know if have you ever done jury duty, Evan?
I've went once and it got canceled, and that was that.
Okay, so when you go, they play this video for you, and this video is straight propaganda. Like, it's insane how like propaganda it is. Like they're like, and it's a guy. He's like, I love doing jury duty. He's like, it was one of the first things I look forward to when I turned 18. I was like, that's not true at all. No one's ever said that.
When I turned 18, that was not the first thing or 150th thing on my mind. It's like the videos you get in driver's ed. Like, those are the same kind of propaganda.
And I was just like, this is ridiculous. And the video starts going like, the starter with the Magna Carta. I'm like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? We all have things we got to do. We got work we got to do. Get me out of here. I don't care about the Magna Carta.
Just guilty or innocent. Just guilty or innocent. That's it. That's all
I don't know. Just let me go home.
What do I have to do?
Yeah. So
what town were you in for that?
So here's the funny thing. If you stalk me, please don't show up at my home. I live in Brighton, as a lot of people know. There's a courthouse up the road in Brighton. You think, oh, you go to the Brighton one. No. I had to go to the one in West Roxbury, and I was like, this is not convenient at all.
That's not helpful.
There's like 4 parking spots, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll just take the T. So it was a very long day. Wasn't picked, thankfully, but yes, it was just a horrible, horrible day. I just wanted to be at Bruins practice. I didn't want to be doing that.
I was gonna say, man, jury duty is such a bummer. You get that letter in the mail, and it's like, fuck, like I cannot believe I have to do this. But it's civic duty, I guess. I haven't had to do it for a couple of years. I think the last time I recall was 2022.
I don't want it.
That would be quite the job. I had a professor in college who was like, she taught journalism and law, so she, was not a full law professor, but expert on law. And she's like, I want to be on a jury. I want to be on a jury so bad, but she couldn't because of her job. And I was like, let the people who can't but want to be on a jury. I don't want to be on a jury. I have no desire to do it. So, I get you wanting to be at Bruins practice. So in the land of the Bruins, Cam Neely and Charlie Jacobs both spoke on Wednesday night, and they had some interesting comments. I want to start with one from Neely, because he kind of mentioned the whole 2 paths thing, and he said, well, we're certainly likely to improve, but as I said, we'll see what happens with what teams decide to do heading into the 4 Nations face-off, and then after 4 Nations is done, it's a race to the deadline, so we'll see where we're at. I think right now we've got to look at 2 paths, one that we're buying and one that we may be just retooling a little bit. We still feel like we've got a playoff team here, and we certainly don't want to jeopardize getting out of the playoffs because we've made some moves that may be good for the future, but not good for the present. What's your reaction? And I listened to you with Connor last week on Poke the Bear, and you had a great rant on sort of how they kind of pulled a wall over fans' eyes. Where are you at with what this team should be doing going forward?
Well, it's first of all nice of them to finally reward the fans for their misery and give them Matty Poitras. It only took 4.5 minutes for him to factor in some scoring.
I was gonna say,
and I think that, I mean, listen, they're saying it is one thing, doing it is another. This is not the first time they've been in this spot in the past where they're kind of in that middle where they're third in their division or a wild card kind of team. You're on the fringes, you're in, you're out, depending on the schedule and how the games go that day. So it's nice that they're saying they have 2 paths, but throughout this entire tenure, they've chosen we're going to have a slight buy. They have never once decided we're going to sell. They've never done that. They haven't sold in the Neely era at any point.
No, even in those years like 15 and 16 and 14, 15, I think they added, Stempniak was an ad one of those years, right?
Yeah, the first deadline with Sweeney, they traded, and they were, I shouldn't say comfortably, but they were in a playoff spot when they did that. But they traded a 2nd and a 4th for Lee Stempniak, and they traded, I think it was a 3rd and a 5th for John Michael Lyles. And so you parted with 4 picks. I think Anthony Kamara, was the prospect traded in those trades as well. So you parted with 4 picks and a prospect. Go to the next year. They trade 2 seconds. The year before that, rather. They trade 2 seconds for Brett Connolly.
I remember that.
So that was Shirelli, not Sweeney, but Neely was president at the time. That was probably the closest thing they've had to being what they are right now, that 14-15 team where you have pieces and you're like, we're a good team, but it just was never really coming together that way throughout the season. Go back to 2017. It's a buy. They bring in Drew Stafford for a conditional 6th, I believe. That became, I think, a 5th or a 4th. So, they've never sold. They've never once sold off their roster. The closest thing they've done to that is probably 2018 when they traded Frank Petrano for a 3rd-round pick, but then immediately used that 3rd-round pick to go out and get Nick Holden from the Rangers. Yes. So it wasn't like it was a true selling. It was a lateral kind of move to prepare for a massive buy for Tommy Wingles, for Rick Nash, for they signed Brian Giunta. They get Ryan Donato out of college. They've never sold. And so that's the part that I think is they can say it, but they've never done it. And so who knows what happens from there.
I don't believe they're going to retool. I don't. And you and I can discuss whether or not they should. I think we're probably on the same page there, but they're not going to. They're not. As you said, they've never done it. And I just don't get the sense that they are going to acquire picks. And you look at what the money they spent in free agency this offseason, I felt the roster was good enough to be a Stanley Cup contender at the beginning of the year. I've been proven wrong. They have not played like that at all. Although they are coming off 2 wins. I'll give them that. But we can get into sort of whether or not those are, not fraudulent, but like, I don't know.
Unsustainable.
Got outshot. Yeah. Like outshot heavily in both. But I don't believe they'll actually do it because they believe, and it's an organizational thing, that if they can get in the playoffs, even as the final seed on the final day, they have a chance at the cup because the playoffs can be like that. I mean, they're not completely wrong with that, but I just think for the future of this team and the success they have in future seasons, I don't know, man. Like, you could use a year where you take a step back, and I don't think it's going to hurt you down the road, and I think fans would understand that. I think if they do like one of those minor buys, and let's say you lose a 3rd round pick or a 2nd rounder, I don't think they're going to trade their first unless it's getting a high-end player with term. I don't think they're dealing their first. But you start dealing other picks, and I was talking to Andrew Raycroft about this last week, and he's like, oh, I don't, the draft picks I don't really care about. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, not saying that you're going to rebuild your team with a 3rd or 4th round pick, but getting an extra one helps, especially when your team is just kind of meh on the ice and it's this stagnant product that's inconsistent. At some point, you do have to take a step back to try to take a couple steps forward.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, you can say I don't care about the draft picks. I can also say the sun is going to explode tomorrow, so we shouldn't care about anything. We don't know. And so I think if you look at it from that scope
that would stink. By the way,
I got things I got to do this weekend.
I want to watch more TikTok before it gets banned.
Yeah, like if you take that approach, like that's great, but that's how you kind of end up in the spot that they are currently in, which is not ideal. And then you look at teams. I've said this before with Connor, and I've said to you just in real life when we've spoken
in real life.
Like you look at a team like Dallas. Like Dallas never bottomed out, but Dallas also kept 2nd round picks that have ended up becoming Jason Robertson, Logan Stanko, and Rupe Hintz. Like you can find impact players in the 2nd and 3rd rounds if you're good at drafting and you know how to identify and acquire talent. So the idea of I don't care about draft picks, like, okay, that's very short-sighted. And that's a quick way to become, battling for the 2nd wild card forever, because you're constantly having to bring in guys that are 32, 29, maybe their best years are behind them. And so I don't agree with that philosophy, that mindset. And I think you look at the draft picks they've jettisoned the last, 7 years. I want to say they've traded like 24 draft picks. I did the math once, and it was something insane like that, where they've traded out so many picks, and you're like, yeah, you're starting to feel it now. Like the bill always comes due. And if you're not going to, become one of these factories that pumps out guys that are undrafted free agents or college free agents and they're immediate impact players, then it's hard to like have that be a sustainable model for you in a hard cap league. And so, yeah, I'm of the belief that if they sell, it should be anybody who's not factoring into their long-term plans. Like if you're a pending UFA and you're not back, pending RFA and you're not back, like trade them. Like you shouldn't. This is not a team that fans and the front office should be overly in love with. Like they have holes, and you went all in for like more than half a decade. It didn't work. You got to come to terms with that. You can't keep clinging on to that and hoping that it all comes together right now. And so, like you said, like if they get in the playoffs, like they have a chance, and like that's their belief. Like it's not a incorrect belief in my opinion, but like you're not trading the guys that, in my opinion, would directly impact that. Like you're not trading David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy or Jeremy Swayman. Like you're trading guys that are not factoring into your long-term future. And if your playoff hopes hinge on the players that you would in theory trade at the deadline, you were never going to win anyway. So don't worry about it.
No. And I think, when you look at this roster, and we can get into this more, like, we thought getting Elias Lindholm was going to solidify you have a number one center for at least the next 2 or 3 years. He has not been a number one center. Like
he's a second liner. He's a second
line center. Like that's what it has been. And they don't have a lot of depth on the wings in the future. After David Pastrnak, right? Like Brad Marchand's 36 going on 37. I don't know how many years left there is of him being a top 6 wing. He's been like solid the last 2 months. But like future wise, it's Pastrnak and then who else? Like
Right.
that's the thing, and I think that's like you mentioned holes. Like you're not great depth wise. You don't have a number one. You still don't have a number one center, and you don't have a lot of high end wings. And like I don't see them fixing even one of those things at the deadline without giving up a first or a high pick. And I think that we see how crazy trade deadline trades are and what the asking prices are. We saw with like Tanner Jeannot a couple years ago. To me, man, like capitalize on that on the other end. Like don't be the team that overpays for guys to come in and just kind of like prop the balloon up. Just like I'm with you. It's not going to kill you to do a retool. The East is not great. So you could probably trade guys and just get picks back and fill those holes with younger guys and be roughly in the same area. Maybe you lose out to Columbus for that second wild card spot or whatever it is, but like you're in it. And there's the other end of it where like the East is mid. So even if you
there it is again.
There it is. I know. I didn't even mean to do that. Even if you don't bottom out, let's say you could still finish second or third to last in the East and only be like 7 points out of the playoffs at the rate the East is going now. And you've got yourself potentially a top 10 pick. So like, I don't know. To me, I'm for them retooling. I have not seen enough. I don't believe in this team as constructed from what they've shown me yet. But first, I want to get into more of these comments from Wednesday night. But our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long over at Prize Picks. It's football playoff time, Ty, which means even though the Pats aren't in it, if you want to keep the games actually interesting for yourself, do some Prize Picks. Why not? There's some good games. Make yourself even more interested. And then I think that this is a great way to do it. Again, you can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Bruins-wise, David Pastrnak's been good. Like David Pastrnak, 0.5 goals on Saturday against the Senators. I might take more. Like, it's hard to tell you to do anything with this Bruins team. Like maybe a time on ice or hits for Charlie McAvoy, but like even that's tough. But maybe there's something. You'll find Pastrnak, I think, is the safest one right now. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So Cam Neely had an interesting comment. Another one. He said, we've gone all in a number of times over the past 10 years, and rightfully so. And we got to be smart. If you do it again, you've got to know that you're a team that has a good chance to have a deep run. You don't want to go all in and then not really feel confident that you're going to have a deep run. So I think all of us on the outside can look at this team and go, yeah, I don't see a deep run in the future. Like I just don't. Not saying this roster or this core in future years isn't going to be good. You don't need to blow it up. But I don't think this roster as constructed this year with this staff and everything is going to go on a deep run. I have not seen enough to think that. But I go back to what they did in the offseason where they spent, what was it, $60 million on bringing in, 2 of the top free agents.
80.
I don't know how, 80. Yeah. I don't know how willing they're going to be to just kind of pull the plug on this season and look ahead. What do you think?
I agree. I agree because I also think that's sort of a sunk cost fallacy where it's like, we've already committed this much to it. It's like, okay, yeah, but like you can pivot, you can regroup, you can decide to do something a little bit different. And so, yeah, I don't think listen, they're not going to make a massive sweeping change. Like they're not going to trade Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov and bring in Elias Pettersson, as fun as that could be to sit here and think about. Like they're not going to do that, I don't think. And so,
it would be fun.
It would be fun. It would be fun to do like a massive kind of hockey trade. I think that's a summertime topic. I think that if you want to shake up the DNA and you want to get somebody who can maybe, I don't know, jolt your culture a little bit, get it kind of maybe get guys hungry again. Like that's when you do that. You really can't do that in season, just the way that the current league is set up and the no moves and all that nonsense. But yeah, they got to realize that they can't keep doing things the way they've been doing them. Just real quick, while we were talking about, about what they should do, what they can't do, like look at the Capitals. Look at the Capitals in 23 and 24. Teams that wanted to compete but really couldn't. You know, like last year, they trade Kuznetsov, they trade Anthony Mantha, and they trade was it Joel Edmondson, I think, as well?
Yes.
They got 5 draft picks for those 3 guys in total. 5 of them. Kuznetsov was a third. I think Mantha got fetched a second. I want to say a second or a third. Like, but they got draft picks. Go back the year before that, 2023.
2 draft picks. Mantha was a second and a fourth.
Right, for Anthony Mantha. Like that's good value for a guy like that. You know, if you're the team trading him. Go back to 2023. Obviously, they make the Orlov and Hathaway trade. They also trade. I think it was Rasmus Sandin they traded. They also traded Lars Eller. They traded Marcus Johansson. They acquired, I think it was two first-round picks in total, 3 second-round picks, and I think a pair of thirds. And it's like, okay, that's what you do. That's how you accelerate a rebuild or a retool. You maximize, you extract max value for your assets. And if I'm looking at that from the Bruins standpoint, I'm going, oh my God, do that. Please do that. I don't care how you do it, but do it. And there are guys that I think beyond the obvious ones that they should look into trading.
Such as?
All right, let's go back a year ago. They trade a 3rd-round pick and Jake Zaboral, and they bring in Andrew Peeke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you get a 2nd-round pick for Andrew Peeke this year? Can a desperate team who wants some nasty on their back end trade you 2 second-round picks? Can you maybe grab a first out of somebody who goes, we got a good team, but our defense is woof.
Our right side is bad. We need a good penalty-killing right-shot defenseman.
Can you get a pair of seconds or 1 first? Just can you upgrade from the 3rd-round pick you traded a year ago? Can you do that? That's something I would look into if I'm the Bruins. Charlie Coyle has this year and next on his contract. I love Charlie Coyle. I think he's a great guy. He's a stand-up guy. I think the A on his jersey, I think you said it, should be permanent. I agree with that 100%.
I just wrote it down to talk about, but I agree with you.
But 32 years old.
Yep.
You know, like, all right, like, is it time to get out of that if you can? Some contender could look at Charlie Coyle and go, that stabilizes our 3rd line. We got to make that kind of move. Like, that's a pick I'd look at. That's a trade I'd look at. You know, and then you have your obvious ones like Frederick, Geeky. I don't think you're getting anything for Wallstrom, but like Brazeau, a pending UFA, like, those are guys
Brazeau's
that,
raised his value. Like, I think Brazeau's I think you could get something somewhat legitimate draft-wise for a guy like Brazeau.
You can get the Mantha trade. If you get the Mantha trade for Justin Brazeau, I'm kind of tempted to do that, honestly.
You won that. You went out and signed him out of the AHL. Like, that was a nothing signing at the time, and it's like, holy crap. We end up getting draft picks. I do think, you know, I love Brandon Carlo. I do. And I don't want to uproot defensively. I don't know. I'm not super confident in their ability to find another second pairing right shot defenseman, at least right now. But like, if someone came and offered you a lot for him, you know, even a way bigger package than you get for Andrew Peeke, obviously, like, I would consider that. I would consider it. I don't want to do it because I'm with you. You know, if you can get a lot for Peeke, you just do that. And I don't think they're going to do that. But I would be open to the idea. If you could get like a first and something else for Carlo, who, again, people can say whatever they want about him. Like, one of the better shutdown guys in the league, like, has that reputation at least. Like, you can get a team to bite. I'd be open to it. I'd be open. He's 28, so I don't love that. But I'd be open to it if it gets you picks.
It all depends, you know, like what is the long-term view of what he does and where he fits sort of in your plans. Like, because that's a guy that I look at and I say, like, he's a bit, he gets almost like I think it's unfairly maligned in terms of like how the fans look at him because they want him to be something he's never going to be. He was never a guy who put bodies through the boards. If you watched him for the Tri-City Americans, he was never that kind of guy. He was always, he's big, but he skates well. And that's, you know, that was sort of like the mold of the new defenseman, was that these guys are 6'5", but they skate really well and they can make some puck plays.
And he's got a great stick, like all that stuff.
The puck plays you haven't seen from him from juniors to the NHL. But he was never a guy that was going to be putting bodies into the 10th row. Like, just stop thinking he's that guy. And you'll appreciate him a little bit more. That said, yeah, like, that's what I'm talking about. If you're going to make a culture kind of trade, he's a guy that I think is in that area, right? If you're going to make that kind of trade, that's a player that you would part with in theory to make that kind of trade happen. But yeah, no, I agree. Like anybody who you don't think is bolted down to your franchise, you listen on. That's a spot you're in. That's a spot you should be in. If you want to cling to 2023, you can, but I wouldn't at this point. It's 2 years old. That team flamed out in the first round. You got to accept it. You got to move on. You got to think long term. And that's a problem I think that you're going to see with Sweeney and Neely. Two guys that have been with the franchise for a long time and basically know that the only time things go sideways and people lose their jobs, at least in that department, is when you miss the playoffs. That's the only time it happens, and that's how it's been. Charlie can say what he wants to say about we don't measure success by making the playoffs, but it's notable that whenever you don't make it, that's when changes come.
Yes, I agree. I want to get to his quotes in a sec. One last thing on the trade front, because I want to make this clear. Like, I think Brandon Carlo is phenomenal. Obviously, he's great for the room. Like,
you don't have to say
leader.
Phenomenal. It's okay. Everyone knows what you're saying.
My point is, I'd listen. I'm with you. I would listen on anyone, as you said, who's not a core piece of this team. You can't not listen on those guys when you're in this spot. One guy I find interesting, and he cannot produce, but he's a phenomenal skater. And I wonder if some team looks at him and says, "Oh, former first-round pick, could work in our bottom six, kill penalties." Johnny Beecher. I do wonder if they would, if someone would be willing to give you not a first, but like, could you get a third or a fourth? Would that be worth it to DL Beecher? Like, I'd be open to the idea. I think he's sort of replaceable. What do you think?
I mean, he's replaceable if you just kept Jesper Boquist at this point, honestly. Like, the way that, yeah, like, it sucks because, and this is what I hated about that pick in the first place was, a little story for you. 2019 happens. 2019, I was probably as tapped in as I ever could be, like, covering this team before I got information like lockdown. And I was told, hey, they're going to draft Johnny Beecher. And I was like, really? Not Kaliev or Bobby Brink or any of these guys? And like, nope, they love Johnny Beecher. It's like, okay. And I said, well, what does he project as? And the guy I was talking to on the phone was like, third or fourth line. And I remember just sitting in my office going, like, throwing my hands up, like, why? Of course it is. Like, why another one of these guys he projects as a third or fourth liner, ceiling wise? And that's from that standpoint, it's like, well, he's a first round pick, but you drafted him knowing that he was a bottom sixer or acknowledging that that was probably his ceiling. So yeah, like, those guys are always replaceable. I think for the Bruins, though, they look at it and go, oh, if we traded a guy we took in the first round for a third round pick, like, that's a massive loss for us. And so I wonder if they'd be more patient with him. I don't know what to do with him. I don't, because I think he's had a miserable year. I think he's been better of late, but the floor was just so low, right? That he had to be better. I mean, almost anything would be better than what he's given you through 35 games or whatever it was. And so I don't know, like, it's a great idea. I mean, but again, like, that's another one who shouldn't be bolted down, but is trading a guy like that a negative reflection on Don Sweeney? And is that a reason why he wouldn't want to do that? That's something I would wonder about.
Yes, I agree. Charlie Jacobs also made comments last night about, the front office and their futures. But first, our friends over at Game Time. It is, it's sort of the dog days of winter. It's mid-January. And the game
sucks.
It sucks. And sometimes sometimes you need to pick me up. Sometimes you need something to do, something fun, gets you out of the cold. Go to a Bruins game. Go to a Celtics game. Bruins right now not doing so hot, so maybe prices are not as bad. And you know why they're not as bad? Because our friends Game Time can hook you up. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. You and I, we live close to the Garden. We live fairly close to Fenway as well. And I love the flash deals. It's, like, let's say it's, this time of year, I want to go to the Celtics on like a Friday night, 2 or 3 hours before the game. I decide I want to do it. I can go to Game Time. There's flash deals, so I'm getting a cheaper deal on those seats. So I'm paying less, and they have all-in pricing up front. So I'm not getting crushed with fees when I go to check out, which is what I like. I like knowing what I'm going to pay up front, and I like when it's less, and Game Time hits on both of those things. So take guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Ty, what time is it?
Game time.
It's game time. It is, in fact, game time. And that's not millennial. That's not Gen Z lingo. That's just a fact.
Did you see that tweet that went out the other day talking about, like, forget boomer complaints, what's your most millennial complaint? Did you see this thread on Twitter?
I didn't see the thread. No. What were some of the complaints?
That they don't like how everything has an app now and everything requires a login. Everything has, like, two-factor authentication. Evan, I got two-factor authentication for paying my electric bill. I don't need
wild?
that. Nobody needs that. If somebody wants to pay my bill, go for it. I don't care.
Yeah, they're gonna hack your stuff.
It's stupid.
I have to do two-factor for something. Oh, there was something recently I had to do it for.
Was the Old Navy app probably like just something
like something like that? Well, everything does have an app now, and I often opt to not do the app. I'll just kind of go through and do it online. I don't care. But I think it's a program we use at New England Hockey Journal, Subtext, where we'll text people subscribers articles, and I have to use two-factor authentication to get to subtext every time. And I'm like, oh my God, like, you want to send my notifications out for me? You're more than welcome to.
It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. No, mine would be headlights are too bright now. We got to go back to the old system. The headlights are too bright.
The LED headlights. Ooh.
I get a headache now when I drive at night because everyone's like, it's like a cop is behind me at all times. It's like, come on, man, like, stop it. It's terrible. That's mine. Because I I've said this to you, like, our age difference isn't like too great, but it feels it because you grew up in a different world than I did. One thing that I was very happy about that my millennial complaint would be, I didn't grow up in the era of like a 9-year-old having an iPhone, and I don't think they should, but now they do. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Like, when I was in high school, I think we had the iPhone 1 or 2, like my senior year, like, and only like the richest kids who nobody liked had iPhones. All the rest of us had like that weird like mix between like a smartphone and a flip phone, and that was the best era. It was the best. I
had what was the name of it? Samsung Intensity, and it slid up. When I was in fifth grade, I got it as a gift. That was my first phone. It was Samsung Intensity. Then I had a Droid. And then I was like, I can't be out of group chat, so I had to get an iPhone in high school. But it wasn't until high school that I got an iPhone.
Droids were trash. Oh, my God.
The Google Play Store.
The initial Droids were so bad. I had one. And I'd be sitting in class, like as in college, and my pocket would just be like on fire. And I'm like, what is happening? And it was just the phone was just so hot from doing nothing.
Nothing.
It was brutal. Oh. And so... But yeah, that I guess my most millennial complaint is that I don't think that. I mean, this is a general, I think, a complaint. I hate that we're available 24/7 now. There used to be an element of like, oh, I don't know what they're up to right now because I don't know, like their phone didn't say they were on Facebook. Oh, you're available now. No, I'm not. I'm just doom scrolling right now. Don't call me. Don't contact me. Leave me alone.
We've gotten to the point where, and I think COVID did this a little bit, where it's like, and you and I don't work in a 9 to 5, so we kind of are always on, but like I have friends who are 9 to 5s who are getting emails on their phones at like 9 p.m. about work stuff. And it's brutal. Like, you didn't sign up for that. Like, I get why people are pissed at that. And you hear like the Slack notification and you just get that like anxiety, like the
oh yeah.
So I have that. I usually have a lot of complaints. I guess I don't at the moment. My one thing would be, and it's not a generational thing. I think Dunks is low-key sus right now. I'll use some Gen Z lingo. They had that $6 meal deal for a little bit. Bacon, egg, and cheese, hash browns, and a coffee for $6, which was great. And I don't do caffeine, so I'd get decaf coffee, and I was fine with it. I like the taste. They changed it at the start of the year, so that's gone now. And I think, don't quote me on this, I believe they raised prices a little bit because I went to get just a bacon, egg, and cheese recently, and it was like $6 just for the bacon, egg, and cheese, which I've never had before. Like, that price. And now the meal deal is 2 wake-up wraps and a coffee for $5. And they took the logos off the napkins, and they have these cheap, crappy napkins now. So my thinking is they're doing the classic, billionaire type thing. Cheap out, make prices go up.
Mhm.
I think that's my little take on dunks. I probably just cost Connor a sponsorship, but
Well, I mean, I saw a commercial, and this might be mine. I saw a commercial the other day for Wendy's, and it was you get a junior bacon cheeseburger and a 10-piece chicken nuggets, or a chicken sandwich, and it's 2 for $7. Buddy, growing up, that was 2 for $3. 2 for $7 now. I'm like, I'll just go somewhere else. I don't need like the fast food. The thing about the fast food is that we all know it's bad for us, but we have this unwritten social agreement that it's bad for us, but it costs $3. So whatever. If it's gonna cost me $10, I'm just gonna go to a real place. I don't care anymore.
So this is the thing. We're getting off topic with Bruins here. People are getting pissed. But my last point is there's a reason that your fast casual places like Chili's and Applebee's and Olive Garden and those places, I've been watching. When I eat, I have to watch YouTube. That's like my most Gen Z thing. I can't eat and not be watching something, especially about food. You didn't know this?
No, iPad kid over here.
No, I have to. Like, I get mad if I have a meal. I'm like, I have to eat this in my room and watch like kitchen nightmare clips on YouTube, or like CNBC will do like things on Chili's and stuff, and I have to watch. I've got to watch it as I eat, and so I watch. This is how I know this stuff. But like Chili's had a crazy surge, and the reason is because they're not. If you get like a burger and fries at Chili's, the price is not that far off from a burger and fries at like McDonald's. And it's it's better. It's real food. It's really cooked. So I think that's why I like fast food, and I still eat a lot of fast food, but the fast casual stuff, it's, like the 99, God bless the 99. So anyway, we got off on a nice little tangent there. But you don't eat food while you watch? You don't watch YouTube while you eat food?
No, I just eat. What's wrong
I thought that
with
was
you?
everybody. Oh my God, no! I have to have something.
No,
on
I mean,
when I'm
if
eating.
I'm in the media room, and this is watch me do a radio thing to bring it back to the Bruins. If I'm in the media room and it's just me and Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, and I feel uncomfortable because these two men I don't think like me very much, I will eat while looking at my phone because I'm like, I don't want to talk to them because I don't think they like me. Like, that's what I'll do.
Well, okay, yes. In the media room, I sit on my phone, or I'll talk to people around me.
Yeah.
Yes, but if I'm alone or if I'm home, like I've got to have something on. I have to. I'm not out in public. In public, you got to bite the bullet.
Yeah.
But I discovered it in college when I would watch stuff while I ate in my, like between classes, and I was like, man, I love this. It's like a drug.
You are literally an iPad kid. That's crazy.
I have to. I have to have it. I gotta have YouTube on. Gotta have it playing. Like getting my like the how like the iPad kids will like sneeze all over their like and then there's like boogers all over the iPad. That's like me, just like boogers all over the iPad.
This kid's awful.
I don't even have an iPad. Anyways, back to the Bruins. Charlie Jacobs made an interesting. A lot of people over the last couple weeks the fans called for Don Sweeney to be fired at the what game was it?
Bruins Oilers game.
Bruins Oilers.
4-0 loss to the Oilers. Yeah,
that's right. And so he said, quote, I have faith that they'll make the right decisions. I don't have the playbook for that. I have faith that they will make the decisions, though. I was thinking about it too. So Sweeney, he's Team Canada's GM for the Four Nations. So obviously he's out there watching. He's also a GM for the Olympic team in 2026 for Team Canada. So I feel like he's got a pretty good pulse on what's out there in the market in terms of player personnel that might be available to us. And every time I call him and we speak quite a bit, he's always looking and always shopping. So I have faith. I go back to my point of like, I don't think that Sweeney is close to getting fired. I just don't. Unless you start missing the playoffs, as we talked about, I don't see them actually doing that. But is Charlie Jacobs wrong to have his faith in these two guys?
I mean, wrong is probably maybe too strong, but to have absolutely no doubts, no reservations, nothing about these guys, like this isn't 1980s Glenn Sather running the Boston Bruins right now. Like, you didn't build a super team. I think in 2023, he really he gave the best roster possible to that team in 2023. And it was, those failures were at ice level. In behind the bench when they lost the Panthers in that first round series. That said, like my question is, what is the long-term vision of the organization? Because to the average fan, and even to us who observe the team on a daily basis or a close to daily basis, like the vision feels like make the playoffs no matter what. I don't care how you get in there, whether you're the 1st seed or the 8th seed, but get in the playoffs.
Yep.
That's a fine vision, but it's not like a generational, oh my God, no one else can do this kind of vision. And I think that's where Jacobs kind of loses me, where I'm like, you don't think you can get another GM whose baseline is make the playoffs? Like, is that what we're doing here? Because if that's what we're doing here, you can bring in basically any GM because 16 to 32 teams make the playoffs. You got a coin flip chance of being right, that you pick the right guy if that's your baseline to getting into having a successful season. So I don't know if they're the wrong guys, but I've said this for a long time now. I think that Sweeney is a fine GM. And by that, I mean he's somewhere in that 8 to 15 region. You know, he has his pros, he has his cons, he has his strengths, he has his weaknesses. This team might need something a little bit higher, but are those guys available? Like, that's a legit question. So I think he gets too much grief from the fans, but I also think that, like, I don't think I think both sides are just so dug in. You know what I mean? Like that Sweeney-ious versus he's an idiot. I think the truth is in the middle there, and I think that's how he is as a GM. I think he's right in the middle. The biggest question mark that I have, Evan, sorry for ranting here, is Cam Neely. Is Cam Neely pragmatic enough as an executive? That's always been my question. He's a very emotionally charged guy, as we all know, and sometimes that can be a weakness as an executive. If you're constantly thinking about the last team that beat you, and you're constantly trying to build a team to beat the last team that beat you, well then, what are you? Because some years you'll lose to a skill team, some years you lose to a brute team. And if you're constantly chasing that, that's how you have just sort of a hodgepodge of what the hell is happening right now. So that's my only sort of critique or question that I would have for Cam Neely in his spot is he pragmatic enough, and does he have enough long-term vision to sort of realize we can't constantly chase the last team that beat us. We have to think where the league is going, where the trends are going, and adapt appropriately. That'd be my question for him.
Yeah, and I think with him, and we've seen this for a long time now, and it goes, back to the big bad Bruins and stuff, but they love their big guys. And I think, they've been getting they've gotten outskated many times this year. Most teams are faster than they are. And speed has not been an element of this team for a very long time. And I think speed is a big element of today's game. The Avs, the Oilers, the Panthers even have speed. Like the good teams have it. Bruins don't. Bruins do not contain that element. And I think that's a really worrisome thing. And, I agree with you with the Neely stuff. Sweeney, I also agree that he's somewhere in the middle. I mean, I'm not ready to fire him. I'm not, because I'm with you. I don't know who you bringing in. Because if you're going to bring him in, it's got to be somebody who is clearly better, who has had that success, or is this star general manager in the making. I don't just want some former Bruin who, could be a good GM. We see it all the time. A lot of former hockey guys aren't always the smartest. A lot are, but, it's very hit or miss. Like, look at what Hextall obviously did in Pittsburgh. But he's not as bad as people say he is. He's not as great as the Sweeney as people say he is. It's somewhere in the middle. I'm with you. The lack of vision. Like, right. I don't know, like where are you headed? And that's what's concerning to me is I just think at the deadline, I don't see them retooling. I see them adding like a Drew Stafford like player, or to channel my inner Petrov McGuire, like Lee Stempniak, someone like that. And it's just we're sitting there like, all right, well, they're going to be one and done if they even make it. And it's like, well, what was the point of that? Because I'm not saying a 5th or a 6th round pick is going to be super valuable, but it's another prospect who could hit. I don't know. Like, I think there is value to that. So,
to your point, like about Sweeney, right? Like, why I have a hard time, like, I this is where I see both sides of the coin, where I think some people are unable to. Okay, he went out and he signed arguably the best center available for what they needed. And he went out and signed the best left shot D available for what they needed. However, why'd you end up there? Well, because you were trading picks constantly. You're not drafting the right kind of guys. So it's like he went out and did what he was supposed to do, but how and why he had to do that is kind of his own doing to a degree. Like we all knew that Bergeron and Krejci were going to retire at some point.
That's the big one.
We all knew it
for years. Yes.
And they never once drafted a guy that you looked at and said, that's the next guy. They tried along the way. Jack Studnicka, Jacob Forsbacka Karlsson,
Charlie going out and trading for Charlie Coyle. That was a thought at the time.
You go out and you bring in these guys, but it's almost like, you know, like if you ever listen to, like, there was a segment the other day with Felger and Maz where they were talking about the Steelers, right? And how the Steelers haven't had a quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger. And Felger asked Tony, well, what do you do? And Maz goes, you keep drafting quarterbacks until you find one. That's what you do. And it's like the Bruins, like you keep drafting centers until you find one. You keep drafting left shot D until you find one. And that was something that just didn't really happen, you know, in theory. Like you go, like the 2017 draft's a great example. They go out and they get Eero Vakanainen. Also in that first round, I think Shane Pinto went shortly after that. Like Robert Thomas, I think, was also that year. Like you had guys around there that you could have drafted that you didn't. So, you know, it's just like that's how you ended up there. So I don't want to kill him for going out and getting Elias Lindholm, realizing, oh my God, we need a guy like Elias Lindholm. But why do you need a guy like that? Because of your drafting and your lack of development and your bad picks and bad trades along the way. Like it's all related. And so that's where it becomes sort of like I want to crush him for it, but he also realizes what he had to do in that moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I you know, the Zadorov thing I still look back at and I'm kind of like, I would have rather them some, you know, veteran left shot defenseman who's here short term, and you go sign like a Duclair to try to make up for Jake DeBrusk. That was sort of the route I wanted them to take. But it's interesting. It's interesting what they're going to end up doing. You and I will probably talk more about this as the season goes along. But Ty, what can the people look forward to from you?
I don't know. No. Why does Radio Shack ask for your phone numbers when you buy batteries? We'll have plenty of stuff on 985thesportshub.com. You can also hear me on the radio Saturday mornings, 9 to 11, on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. I've been riding solo all year. It feels like the Bruins have had.
I was going to say, it's just you.
Like,
it's just you hosting.
It's crazy. And I'll be doing that once again. So your calls, please, 617-779-0985.
How do you handle the callers? The callers on that show aren't bad because like they're like your diehard fans are listening to that, so they know what they're doing. But like I'll hear shows during the day, and I'll just hear the dumbest calls, and I'm like, oh my God, like you really called in to say that, and then the hosts have to handle that. I'm always like, oh my God.
So I have a rule as a talk show host that might hurt my show at times, but I feel like it's a I never want to make somebody feel stupid for calling in. So you could call in with the worst call in the world, but I'm going to entertain it. I'm going to try to find a way to entertain your theory. I might not like it, but I'm going to find a way to make you feel heard and make you feel like your idea, while I might not agree with it, is an idea that I want to talk about. And so
yes, but again, it goes back to like your show has avid listeners who are Bruins fans who are smart, like that. I'm saying like the Felger and Maz caller.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I mean,
that stuff.
The
like,
craziest thing about the Felger and Maz listeners is that they'll be on hold for 2.5 hours, and then they get 11 seconds of airtime before Mike hangs up on them, which I always laugh. My rule is you get 90 seconds. Like that's like kind of like my because we got to keep it moving along. We got full phone lines.
Yep.
But I want you to be heard. I want your ideas. And so, I like, for me, it's different than doing a daily show because like the hockey show, these people want to talk hockey, you know, like, and I think a lot of times, and this isn't to knock what anyone else does on our airwaves. Obviously they're unbelievably successful and they're more successful than I am and probably ever will be, but they are able to focus on the NFL and the Celtics and the Red Sox. Like this show is for hockey fans, right? And I want that hockey fan to feel heard. And so I give them a longer rope than perhaps the Monday through Friday shows do, but that's my own thing. And that's how I feel about the show in general. And so, you know, because like, listen, like before I was a writer, I was an avid listener to sports talk radio. My mother, you know, would drive me to Little League games or practice, and she'd have the Big Show on in the car, you know, as I was getting, you know, rides to practice when I was 10 years old, 11 years old. And so I kind of grew up on it. And, you know, I would listen to Felger and Maz when the Sports Hub launched. I'd listen to, at the time, I think it was Zolak and Tanguay. And so like I would listen to all these shows and I remember being that hockey fan being like, talk hockey. Why aren't they talking more hockey? So
I felt the same way as a kid always. Yep.
Yeah. So I enjoy that element of it all. So I want them to be heard. So it's easier for me to run the board. I thought you meant like the board itself. It's like, no, you just got to press some buttons.
Press the buttons. How do you do that? I get that. Ty, as always, it's fun. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
And that's been Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.